Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the situation around Kaliningrad, which is Russia's exclave, is becoming another focus of tension between Russia and NATO. We've had all these NATO gas bags issuing threats against Kaliningrad. And of course, we have Lithuania, and in fact, all of the Baltic states that are very anxious to provoke a confrontation between NATO and Russia, making also all sorts of threats against Kaliningrad and how they're going to actually cut off the link between Russia and Kaliningrad. So what really has triggered the most recent crisis around Kaliningrad is Lithuania's decision to close its border with Belarus. And then you ask, well, why did they close the border with Belarus? Well, apparently, amidst all this excitement about Russian drones and everything else, Lithuania has detected balloons, helium balloons, floating across from Belarus into Lithuania, but apparently,
It serves what purpose, these balloons?
exactly. The purpose seems to be cigarette smuggling.
That's cigarette smuggling.
Cigarette smuggling. And because of that, Lithuania said we're going to close the border, even though there are all these trucks that are stuck in Belarus that now cannot enter Lithuania. And this, of course, is exacerbating tension between Lithuania and Belarus, and that means between NATO and Belarus, and that means, of course, between NATO and Russia, which, of course, is the whole purpose. So here is this story from CNN. It says Lithuania closes border with Belarus after multiple balloons violate airspace. And it says, closed its border with Belarus following a constant violations of its airspace, the country's foreign minister announced Monday at a time when European nations are on high alert for intrusions into their skies. So they're already on high alert. And then here we have dozens of helium balloons have entered Lithuania's airspace from Belarus over recent days, according to Inga Ruginenie. I don't know, it's a hard one to pronounce, the country's prime minister. And says autocrats, this is very nice, autocrats are once again testing the resilience of the European Union and NATO against hybrid threats. Hybrid threat means you can just say anything at all is a threat, and then you slap a hybrid as the adjective in front of it, and then you say, well, that means hybrid, therefore, who's behind it? Well, Russia's behind this. So we have the helium.
This same person will probably claim that there's a helium gap as well somehow. Okay.
And she called for a united, resolute response against airspace violations. In the press conference, she said that her country's armed forces would take all necessary measures to shoot down balloons. Okay.
So why do you have to shut the border if you're going to shoot down the balloons?
Quite. That's what a normal unsophisticated reader would say, well, so why are you closing the border? Here the balloons, you shoot down the balloons and
Or maybe get some young kids and give them some super duper little what do you call it, drones, and say go hunt for balloons for us. Okay, we'll give you $2.50 for everyone you can shoot down. I bet you'd be plenty of takers. Okay,
that's right, I'm
and
sure.
it'd be fun. It'd be a
Yes,
competition. Okay,
that's
I
right.
mean, why create a threat when there is no threat?
Exactly. And says, in this way, we are again sending a signal that we are ready and
You're
we are
ready for
ready.
helium balloons.
That's right. And we are ready to take even the most severe actions when our Yes, a severe action. You know, tiny Lithuania. I mean, what is the severe action that you're ready to take? Severe actions when our airspace is violated.
So so severe action. So you're going to use missiles. You're going to use jet fighters. How much does it cost to fly a jet fighter for an hour, George? I have no idea, but I'm sure
I,
it's not cheap. I'm
I,
sure it's
I'm
not
sure it's
cheap.
not. I'm sure it isn't. Helium balloon sounds very fancy, but it's nothing. I mean, most balloons are helium. I mean, with a little kid with a balloon, it's probably with helium. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, it's like, but it's not. Oh, it's helium. Oh, it's not just an ordinary balloon. It's a helium balloon, but it's nothing. It's just yeah, that's what you fill up balloons with. In response to the border closure, Belarus's foreign ministry said it has handed Lithuania a note of protest over the move. This violates citizens' rights and freedom of movement principles. Belarus supports dialogue and practical cooperation. And then we have earlier this month, dozens of small hot air balloons entered Lithuanian airspace, some of which were carrying smuggled cigarettes. So you're thinking, okay, well, why are you closing the border? You've got dozens of small hot air balloons, and they're carrying smuggled cigarettes. Who sent them? I mean, do you know who actually sent them? I mean,
Well,
who's supposed to receive them?
how do you calibrate the threat of small hot air balloon? What is that, do you go on alert? Do start conscription?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry, this seems so trivial here.
well,
Okay.
it really is. I mean, it's like, well, it sounds like
Well, they wanted to close the border anyway.
exactly. I mean, it sounds like there's some, if this is even true, because you have to wonder whether it's true, but it sounds like, well, there are some cigarette smugglers. I mean, you have a problem with cigarette smugglers. And
Well,
so
George, you do know that Russia is at the center of the international cigarette smuggling syndicate, right?
I
Okay.
did not know that, but I can believe it. Though it was not clear where the balloons came
Came
from.
from, okay, there you go. But we have to call NATO.
Exactly. Darius Buta, a senior advisor at Lithuania's National Crisis Management Center, told the Associated Press at the time that Belarus smugglers are increasingly using balloons for smuggling cigarettes into the EU.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
I
I think
mean,
we're on the path to war.
that's right. You're still okay, and you've closed the border. I mean, you can't just simply inspect. I mean, trucks coming in, are they carrying contraband? I mean, you can't do that. You actually close the border completely. And then it says Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, called Monday's violations a hybrid threat, describing them as destabilization and provocation. Europe stands in full solidarity with Lithuania in the face of the persistent incursions of helium smuggling balloons into its airspace. We are
There's
ready.
no self-reflection how silly that sounds.
We are ready and we standing. We're always standing in full solidarity. Whoever it is, we're always in full solidarity. Europe is on high alert after multiple recent incursions by drones and aircraft into NATO airspace. And here's the Euro News. It says Belarus threatens to seize over 1,000 Lithuanian trucks stranded after border closure. 1,000 trucks. That's a lot of trucks. Lithuania closed two border crossings with Belarus 29th of October after meteorological balloons flying from Belarus caused repeated disruption to air traffic. So then we have Belarus's Lukashenko threatened to seize over 1,000 Lithuanian trucks stranded in the country following the closure of the border after repeated incursions by weather balloons carrying smuggled cigarettes. And then Lithuania, a NATO ally and European Union member, closed the two border crossings with Belarus after that, causing repeated disruptions to air traffic at the airport of the capital of Vilnius. the border will remain closed until at least the end of November. So that's a long stretch of time. You're going to keep the border closed, and so all these trucks are stranded there.
Yeah, but
Uh,
are the helium balloons continuing to float around? I mean, your action is not,
it's a
it's
very
not
good question.
addressing,
Exactly.
is it addressing the issue? Okay.
Yes, that's a very, very good question. Yes. Are there still helium balloons floating in?
So, and if they are, then maybe you should just open the border.
That's right. Lithuanian officials said the flight disruptions were part of anti-Western activities by Russia-allied Belarus intended to undermine stability.
Well, I mean, these people are real nervous nillies. You know, I mean, a couple of helium balloons with cigarettes really scare you, really. Wow.
Yeah, boy, yeah, exactly. Boy, NATO's in good shape. They're terrified of, was it? They said a few dozen, so that's not a great deal. I mean, these are sort of balloons, flying in, cigarettes, and you think, and interestingly, they don't investigate. I mean, if let's say smuggled cigarettes are flying in, you think, well, there has to be some kind of a cigarette smuggling ring here in Lithuania. Who's behind this? Who's responsible? It wouldn't be that difficult to. Lithuania is a small country. The number of possible suspects has to be quite limited in Lithuania as to who's involved in this enterprise. Um, Lukashenko denounced the border closure as a mad scam and part of a hybrid war against his country. He suggested that Vilnius itself needs to combat smuggling of contraband. That kind of common
Or
sense.
maybe this is Lithuania doing a special op. They're the ones that could be generating it.
I think so. I think so. We have to wonder, what's the evidence that this ever happened? And the Belarusian authorities have refused to open the corridor exclusively to evacuate the stranded Lithuanian trucks, demanding that Lithuania fully reopen the border. Lukashenko said on Monday that up to 1,200 Lithuanian trucks were stuck in Belarus because of the closed border and warned that authorities could seize them if Lithuania fails to reopen it. If they
It's a
don't do
lot.
it in the next few days, we will make a decision in accordance with our law up to the confiscation of the vehicles.
Oh, we could have a confiscation crisis here.
Lukashenko said the trucks were moved to paid parking areas. They can't just loiter on the roads, 1,100 or 1,200 big trucks. That's a lot of trucks.
A lot of trucks.
I mean, that takes up a lot of room. I mean, just simply, an ordinary parking space, that's not enough room for
But
1,200
anyway, I
trucks.
guess these trucks are so big that the drivers can sleep in them, I guess.
I guess so. And then we have Elandas Mikenas of the Lithuanian National Road Carriers Association said in an interview with Radio Free Europe that the drivers were stranded with their vehicles, felt increasingly tired and angry, and some cargo could get spoiled. Well, I would imagine. I mean, you're stuck there. You're planning on going home, and now you're going to stuck there till at least the end of November. The tensions come as Europe is on high alert after drone incursions into NATO airspace, and some European officials describe the incidents as Moscow testing NATO's response. Yeah, of course, some European officials said that.
Yeah, but George, I mean, we've done a lot of spent a lot of time on these drones, now balloons.
Yep.
But in all of the stories that you create slides for, we've never seen one picture.
No, that's very strange, isn't it? Yeah. Never,
We've
never,
never
never,
seen
never.
one picture
No.
of all of these
Right.
allegations.
No, no, never. And it's always, oh, Moscow's doing this, Moscow's doing that. But how about a few names of people? Who are you saying who's involved in this? Who sent these drones? I mean, do you know that they came from Belarus? Was that the origin of these helium balloons? And so here we have another story, which is Lithuania may halt transit through Russian enclave Kaliningrad to, quote, ensure security, unquote. Such a move would be coordinated with EU, its member states, says Foreign Minister.
Well, isn't it technically an exclave?
It is an exclave. It's not an enclave. Um, And Lithuania said on Tuesday that it could suspend the transit of Russian goods and passengers to the Kaliningrad, or here they got it right, exclave, if it is deemed necessary to safeguard national security following the closure of its border with Belarus. And so again, the foreign minister says Vilnius retains the possibility to close transit if it is needed to ensure our security. All of this is, you know, whipping all this up, ensuring our security. What exactly? How is your security in any way under threat? Because these, few balloons with cigarettes on them.
Where's the proportionality
Right.
here?
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe just kind of a crazy idea. Maybe the Lithuanians should call up the Belarusians and say, well, what do you see? What are you seeing here?
Right.
Oh, well, this is what we see. And maybe just kind of just resolve it over a telephone call. Oh,
They,
you
they
look
never.
into it. I'll look on our side. Let's see if we can get this resolved. Nobody wants
Uh,
confiscated contraband, want contraband floating across borders. Maybe we can work something out. No, see, number one, this story may not be true at all.
yeah,
Okay, it could be complete fiction.
right.
And what they want to do is they want to see what the Russians are going to do about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's
That's
a
that's the whole
test.
point. That's exactly the point. But it was the same thing. Remember when we talked about this when Finland closed its border because Russia was what was the term, weaponizing
Immigration.
immigration.
Yeah.
And I think we raised exactly that very question. So why can't you just sort of sort this out? And if there is an issue that so many people are coming through the border, then yeah, get on the phone with the Russians and see what the issue is. Instead, no, we're closing all the
Yeah, I mean,
transit points.
I've been, you've crossed borders in Europe,
Yeah,
know, particularly when there's cars and human passage. I don't want to say traffic. Um, these are all the Lithuanians know the Belarusians and the Russians know the. I mean, they go to work every day.
right,
Okay, they
right,
have to work together.
right,
It's like, hey, what's going on with this? I'll check. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'll talk to my guys. I'll
right,
get back to you after lunch.
right. Of
These things can be resolved.
course,
See, what Lithuania wants. See, this is like Lithuania Day. See what we're doing for the cause.
yeah,
We're fighting helium balloons of
right.
all things. That's this. That I've always believed, George, that there's one big whiteboard out there, and they say, "Oh yeah, tomorrow we'll get the Lithuanians. Yeah, get that story ready. Okay, here we
That's right.
go.
No, no,
Get their people, activate them, mobilize them. It's your news cycle. You got it.
that's
Okay,
right.
I'm serious. I
No,
truly
I
believe that.
absolutely, I agree with you. That's it. So this is today's news cycle is the helium balloons and closing the border, and then tomorrow it's the what was it, the ships, the shadow fleet, Russia's shadow fleet. We need to do something about the shadow fleet.
Yeah,
So
I think that's on Friday's agenda, but
exactly. So it was something, and then maybe something about Transnistria. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, we got something's going on in Moldova. Russians are again. The hybrid attack on Moldova. So that's right. That's next Monday. The hybrid attack on
and
Moldova.
then Ursula von der Leyen gets to say solidarity. We're working
Exactly.
as solidarity.
Exactly. Your full solidarity with whoever Moldova.
Well,
Um,
Reichs Chancellor Merz, he can say, well, this is another good reason to remilitarize Germany, to
that's
fight the helium gap.
they,
Okay.
that's right. So
Well,
this.
he's such a clown. He'd actually say it.
Yes, he is. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's right. And they're going ahead with it. They're going ahead with of militarization and reintroduction of conscription.
Yeah,
I
everybody in Europe has got to be really happy
yeah,
about it.
exactly. They're all delighted. Oh, great! Happy days are here again.
Well, just as an aside, everyone, not this it will not happen if Poland has its way because Poland wants to be the
Yep,
Washington surrogate
yep.
in NATO. It doesn't want the French, it doesn't want the
No,
Germans,
no,
okay? And so um, uh, look for sparks there because I lived in Poland for a while. Remilitarized Germany.
no.
No.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
What they want is Americans. They want
Exactly the one the Americans. But if Poland can't stop this German remilitarization, I think they probably will try to form some kind of a partnership with Germany. They would want to be the senior partner. That isn't going to happen. But they would have to do something along those lines because ultimately Poland can't really stop Germany. I mean, if Germany is determined to embark on this, so it will be a kind of revival of the 1930s. 1930s, Poland was ready to be Hitler's junior partner. I mean,
Yes.
there was never really an issue with that. They just didn't think Hitler would turn on Poland first. They should have done. I mean, anyone with any slightest brain would know that Hitler can't attack the Soviet Union without dealing with the Polish problem first. But up until then, they thought, hey, we're just going to be Germany's junior partner. Here we have the statement follows Lithuania's closure of its border with Belarus, citing a series of smuggling incidents. And then this foreign minister says no one can limit Lithuania's national security measures or what we decide to do to prevent threats, protect our citizens' sovereignty and territorial integrity. No one. No one's going to stop us from doing anything.
Oh my God.
Adding
It's
that
a
the
national security
That's
crisis.
it. Budrys said, adding that the government will take everything required to ensure security. All this is such utter nonsense. We know exactly that when they talk like this, they mean the United States. I mean, the idea that Lithuania can actually do anything for itself is a joke. Under an existing EU-Russia agreement, Russian cargo and passenger trains, as well as road traffic, are permitted to cross Lithuanian territory to reach Kaliningrad. This is very important because I want to then talk because in a minute when Lavrov addressed this issue, and that's a kind of key thing. The Russians are very legalistic. I mean, I think too
Yes, they are.
legalistic, but nonetheless, they're very, very um, good on reminding everyone of these various agreements that have been signed between the West and Russia, and which the West naturally ignores and deliberately sweeps under the rug, and media never really asked about them. But the Russians going to remind everyone, yeah, we signed a number of agreements on the issue of Kaliningrad. And then the minister said Monday that the new border restrictions would not affect Kaliningrad transit, although the president had raised the possibility of reconsidering it over the weekend. And then here is this interview with Lavrov, um, and then he says he's asked recently Lithuanian authorities under far-fetched pretexts have increasingly flirted with completely closing the borders and halting transit to Kaliningrad for Russians. What measures are being taken to prevent this? Perhaps in conjunction with Minsk. How will Russia respond to Lithuania if it does take this step? And then here's Lavrov, these small countries, the young Europeans, greatly overestimate their importance to West Europeans, to the gatekeepers of the European Union. Those in Europe who retain common sense and genuinely care about the continent's security, although there are fewer and fewer of them, are well aware of the provocative role these Baltic states have been assigned, especially by their British handlers. He really doesn't like the British. It's a very interesting that this that in terms of the hierarchy of who really annoy the Russians most. I mean, I think the Germans probably number one, but Britain is number two. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
because the British are malicious.
yes, yeah, yeah. The Germans are just insolent.
Yes.
Yeah, but the British are malicious, exactly. Returning to your question, indeed, recently, in addition to the constant threats to shut down Kaliningrad transit, some figures, no longer in Lithuania but in the European Union, have been egging on the Baltic states by suggesting that Kaliningrad could be razed to the ground. Lithuania has now closed its border with Belarus, leaving hundreds of trucks belonging to Lithuanian carriers stranded in neighboring Belarus. And there have been these NATO, I mean, admittedly, they were retired officials, but they've been threatening to seize Kaliningrad. And then Lukashenko spoke figuratively on this matter. These are outrageous actions. And then he says, the Americans had this saying about dictators in Latin America. The dictator is a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. The European masters of the Baltics have the same attitude toward their antics. They are assigned the role of committing as many vile acts as possible against the Russian Federation and at the same time provoking Russia into actions that they will then try to sell to Washington
Yeah.
primarily as grounds for initiating serious military
It's
action.
so transparent, isn't it?
That's
Okay. You
exactly
get
right.
all this verbiage from the Western media,
Right.
and then the answer to a very straightforward question, you get a very straightforward answer.
Well,
Okay.
exactly, and we've discussed this many times. Of course, that's what it is to provoke a confrontation and then scream, Article 5, Article 5, you have to come to our rescue.
Daddy, Daddy, Article 5.
That's right. Um, and then we see this, but the commitments regarding Kaliningrad transit are not only Lithuania's. And this is, he reminds people, they are the commitments of the European Union. So back in 1994, when the partnership and cooperation agreement between Russia and the EU was signed, it included a provision on the need to ensure transit through each other's territory given that we are neighboring countries. Then in 2002, a separate joint statement on transit was signed. It had a direct effect. In 2004, when the Baltic states, along with several other East European countries, were admitted to the EU, a statement on the enlargement of the European Union and the principles of partnership between the European Union and the Russian Federation was signed. Everything was enshrined there. And so I just wanted to show exactly what Lavrov is referring to, because nobody ever covers this in the West. So here is this 1994 agreement that he just talked about, agreement on partnership and cooperation. Um, and then it says Article 12 says the parties agree that the principle of freedom of transit as an essential condition of attaining the objectives of this agreement. In this connection, each party shall provide for freedom of transit through its territory of goods originating in the customs territory or destined for the customs territory of the other party. And then here is the 2002 agreement that also Lavrov just referred. This is joint statement of the EU and the Russian Federation on transit between Kaliningrad region and the rest of the Russian Federation. And here again, they talk about this. The parties acknowledge the unique situation of the Kaliningrad region as part of the Russian Federation, but separated from the Federation by other states, with the aim of further developing the strategic partnership between EU and Russia. The parties therefore agree to make a special effort to accommodate the concerns of both sides related to the future transit of persons and goods between the Kaliningrad region and other parts of Russia, and to intensify their cooperation to promote the social and economic development of the region as a whole.
Okay, some may accuse us of being a bit nerdy here,
Very,
but
very nerdy.
I would retort, but all of the articles that are being written about it never mention
No,
any of these.
that's exactly the reason. I know this is kind of boring, you're going through these.
No, 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 but it proves the point,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
Who's breaking the rules?
Yes.
Who's being dishonest? Who's being provocative?
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. So that's what's so remarkable. Lavrov makes these statements, and nobody ever really looks up on them. He starts citing, oh, there was this agreement, oh, we had this agreement in 2008, and you think, well, I didn't know that. You look up, yeah, there it is. There was an agreement in 2008 between Medvedev and Merkel. This was an agreement, and again, for what was theoretically a strategic partnership between Europe and Russia. Nothing came of it. But nonetheless, an agreement was signed, and then
Yeah,
it's all been just completely forgotten.
yeah, look at the very center there. Strategic partnership
Right.
between EU and Russia. I mean, it's almost like, wow, that actually was going on at one
That's
point.
right. Exactly. This is their words. This isn't, that's right. And then here it says, the Russian Federation, European Union, note there from the 1st January, blah, blah, Republic of Lithuania will, according to its agreement, implement national regulation for border control. The parties understand these rules shall be applied in a flexible manner in order not to disrupt the traditional flow of transit passengers by rail. And then it goes on the economic and social development of the oblast, that's Kaliningrad, the parties agreed to implement a comprehensive package of measures in order to ensure easy passage of borders for legal purposes, with a view to facilitate human contacts and promote the development of the Kaliningrad region. So they signed all of this. This is the point. This is what the West does. They sign these agreements. They want to rush something through. They knew they had a problem on their hands if they're going to rush through the Baltic states' membership of NATO and the EU. So they have to, oh yeah, we've got to get a deal with Russia. And then, of course, we can forget about it. Then, oh yeah, well, that's a long time ago. But here it's clear that they were ready to say, yeah, absolutely, no one's going to mess around with the transit between Kaliningrad and the Russian Federation. Don't even think about it. No one's going to start messing with it. And then here was the 2004. This is the joint statement on EU enlargement and EU-Russia relations. And here says, we recall the joint statement of the EU and the Russian Federation of 2002, which acknowledges the unique situation of the Kaliningrad region and take note of its implementation. And then this is the kind of nerdy. This is essentially it's a kind of a certificate. You have to have signed a certificate for transit of goods, FRTD. And then here it says, we will effectively implement the principle of freedom of transit of goods, including energy, between Kaliningrad region and the rest of Russia. In particular, we confirm that there shall be freedom of such transit and that the goods in such transit shall not be subject to unnecessary delays or restrictions and shall be exempt from customs duties and transit duties or other charges related to transit. So the point about this is that it doesn't matter about your sanctions. We've imposed sanctions on Russia. It doesn't matter what sanctions you've imposed. That's the agreement that you signed. You have to stick to that agreement. The fact that you then went ahead and imposed sanctions in 2022, 18 years later, that doesn't supersede the agreement that you signed.
Exactly. And it was in force.
Right.
It was agreed to law.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, and this is the reason why, as I say, why do we go over this? Is because the media never report on this. No one actually know that what are the agreements that Russia has actually signed with the EU, and which kind of vitiate all your subsequent anti-Russia policies. Whenever it was inconvenient, this is the way that they are. Whenever it's inconvenient, you just sort of forget all the pledges you made. So, I mean, obviously it's a NATO one, not 1 inch to the east. They say, oh yeah, but it was never written down on a piece of paper. Yeah, it was never written down on a piece of paper. Everyone knew exactly what was meant when Baker said to Gorbachev in February 1990, not 1 inch to the east. Genscher, the German foreign minister, knew exactly what was meant. Everyone knew what was meant. And they said, oh well, that was only about German unification. That was all about German unification. Everyone knew that NATO will not expand to the east. And then, so this is now Lavrov returns and says, I remember when the decisions were being made to admit Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia to the EU in 2004. We asked our European interlocutors, we had many contacts and fairly confidential conversations back then, whether they were confident that these three Baltic countries were ready to meet EU membership criteria. They told us, oh, obviously they were falling short in some areas, but. And then when we then asked whether it made sense to immediately drag such unprepared candidates into the EU. Yeah, good question. Now you've got your Kaya Kallas types. They told us, we understand what you're talking about. After gaining independence, they retain phobias. They remember the occupied state they found themselves in, and these phobias won't go away. We'll accept them into the EU and NATO, and they'll calm down. Calm down? Quite the opposite, I think. And then says, not only haven't they calmed down, they've decided they'll call the tune in both the EU and NATO, at least when it comes to openly Russophobic, anti-Russian rhapsodies. That's why they're standing still. And then he goes on to yet another one of these issues. So that's the some obvious common sense points from the Russians. but the reason why it's worth discussing is that these are all actions that are designed to provoke. I mean, that is what they're trying to do. They are provoking Russia into launching some kind of an attack against one of the Baltic states, and then to use that as a pretext for
Mhm.
the escalation of a conflict between NATO and Russia. That's what it will. That's why all these threats about
Well, what they
Kaliningrad. So,
want is they want the Russians to have some kind of armed escort to get these goods back and forth and all that. I don't know how much I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but how much Kaliningrad gets from the sea and how much it gets from rail and all that. I don't know the numbers there, but it's a vulnerability that they're probing, obviously, and this is all about trying to get Russia to respond in a way that they can call Washington and say, "See,
yep.
okay, that's it."
Right, right, right. I mean, they threatened in the past, oh, they're going to put a blockade
Yeah, I
on
remember that. Yeah.
Kaliningrad. Then they kind of back away, but then they come back to it. Now, this whole thing with suddenly closing the border, you think, well, obviously this is preliminary to something. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. Why would you close the border with Belarus because of some helium balloons carrying smuggled cigarettes? Why would you close the border? 1,200 trucks stuck now in Belarus. I mean, somebody's losing money as a result. I mean, these goods are not being delivered. So you think this is obviously some preliminary to making some moves. Oh, with Kaliningrad, this is a real threat to us. So that's why like as we were talking about this, the white board, this is all part of trying to provoke this conflict, and ultimately they want Russia to shoot at something non-Ukrainian. That's the goal here. Oh, shoot down some NATO aircraft, shoot at some Lithuanians, and that's where it's where all of this is going.
Yeah, this is a provocation. Okay. And this is not going to end anytime soon, and including if there is some battlefield resolution in Ukraine, these shenanigans will continue. Okay.
Obviously.
Constant harassment. Okay. They do not want any kind of normalization with Russia. That won't happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Absolutely. They're absolutely determined. And they make clear. I mean, this Kaya Kalas creature said that, oh, no, don't even think about any kind of normalization with Russia once this war comes to an end. No, this conflict with Russia, that'll continue. The hatred that she has, the hatred that she carries for Russia, and that I think is true about the leaders of the Baltic states and clearly the leaders of Poland. This is really quite psychotic, and this is now thoroughly integrated within the NATO infrastructure, particularly with Ursula von der Leyen, who seems to I don't know exactly what she seems to be determined to avenge what happened to Germany. I mean, the more you listen to her, the more you seem to want to avenge what happened in 1945.
Well, I wonder if she believes she has a job for life.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
You know, um, um, this continued harassment and non-normalization with Russia, that's perfectly fine with me as long as we don't go to war.
right,
Okay. If Europe wants to shut itself off from Russia completely, fine, fine.
right,
Okay. It's not Russia's top priority.
right,
It won't be ever again, probably. Okay.
right.
I mean, the Europeans are just isolating themselves from the world, slowly but surely, at their own expense, to their own detriment. Okay. It's not a high issue. Obviously, protecting Kaliningrad is a constituent part of the Russian Federation. They will go to war over that. Yes, they will.
There was
They will.
it's also Russia's outlet to the Baltic. So it's a key strategic. That's why they insisted on keeping it. And just that when Stalin kind of wanted that piece of territory, from Germany, to build these Baltic fleet there. So that's an absolutely crucial strategic asset for Russia. And so, but that's why they keep threatening it and keep threatening, oh, they're going to blockade it, we're going to attack it, and so on. But the thing is then, can you keep escalating and escalating like this without eventually war breaking out? I have my doubts. And this is why we go back to World War One. Remember all these different crises. Whenever you read these history books about the road to World War One, and with the whole series of these crises, each time, okay, well, we'll resolve that. Phew, we managed to avoid a war, and then boom, we had the two Morocco crises. The annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, everyone studies this at school, but eventually, boom, 1914. That was a crisis that couldn't be avoided. So that's why you look around this, shadow
Yeah,
fleet,
but you just said,
Transnistria, whatever. But
yeah,
eventually, you're not going to be able to avoid it.
yeah, but see, that's the operative word here. The European powers avoided going to war. In this case, they're looking for a pretext to go to
Exactly.
war.
They want to do it. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Start it and blame it on the Russians. The Russians so far have been pretty adroit. They see through these things very clearly.
You're right.
Um, and, it's been said, but it needs to be restated. They don't want to go to war with Russia. They want the United States to go to war with
Exactly.
Russia.
That's exactly it. That's what it's all about.
You know,
They
they want to light the fuse and then get on the sidelines.
That's exactly. It's all of that. That's why there's Article 5. What does Article 5 mean? It means the United States is obligated to come and fight for you. And that's it. So when Lithuania, do Estonia, you don't have anything. Poland doesn't have anything. It's but ultimately it's always to get the United States involved. And of course, now that Trump has committed himself in the way he has to Ukraine, which in the early days of his administration he was determined not to do, but now that he's done it, then they think, hey, we can just keep pushing and pushing, make a whole song and dance over some cigarette cartons flying in, and that, this is hybrid war. We're under attack. Europe is under attack. Drone over Denmark.
Over
I mean,
cigarettes,
yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
Let that sink in. Over cigarettes. That's how desperate they're looking for a way.
yeah,
And of course, Lavrov is absolutely right. These three Baltic republics, it keeps them in the news. They're in the coalition. They're leading the way. These plucked little nations. This fairy tale narrative. Okay, that can get us all killed.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and of course, in Poland with this creature, Radek Sikorski, that's also what his goal. I mean, he's obviously been groomed by the Western intelligence services. You know, that's how he gets all these big jobs, and the whole purpose of these jobs is to provoke Russia, and that's what he does this. Every day. He
Yeah, I mean,
does something in order to try and provoke Russia.
this is a cadre of people. Victoria Nuland, remember her, everybody? She was for her goal was to take down Russia. That was her. And you know what? Because of her and people like her, they got the Russians and the Ukrainians fighting each
Okay,
other. A
absolutely.
remarkable accomplishment. A
Right.
remarkable
Very,
accomplishment.
very exactly. That's exactly right. That was always the goal. We still don't know why she resigned. That still remains a kind of a mystery. What
Well, I
what
think
was she?
you're the one, she didn't get promoted. I mean,
That
she's
it could be as
yeah.
mundane as that she didn't get the deputy secretary of state job. It could be that she had something in mind. She was planning because she was talking about this. Putin's going to have a few surprises.
Well,
In
those were the two theories that we
exactly.
posited
We don't
about.
know.
Because
But
say, oh, she's off her rocker now. She's done enough. Okay,
yeah.
that's one theory. One theory is that well, she has a good job. She's over
Oh,
at
yeah, yeah.
Columbia.
I mean, yeah, yeah. But
She's
she
at
always did
Columbia.
have a good job. I mean, even if, let's say you're number three, That's not bad. I mean, okay, you're not number two, but the big number three in the State Department. That's still a good job, and you're head of policy planning, which is that's the key position in the State Department. So, I mean, yeah, maybe she wanted that number two slot, but it may be that they found out that she had something really loony in
Well,
mind,
maybe it
and
was
they got her out.
something like a spider web
Exactly,
thing,
something like that. Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Because
something.
because what she would, she and like Michael McFaul, you have to bring it to the Russians, not to the Russians in Ukraine. You have to bring it to them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
And Michael
so
McFaul, now that you
yeah.
mention he's now saying, yeah, absolutely, Russian tourists should be pay a fee, a kind of a Ukraine reconstruction fee. So every Russian who tries to enter any European Union, but presumably also the United States, should be hit with a fee for there's a Ukraine reconstruction fee. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's like, does that mean Americans would have to be paid, have to be forced to pay a fee, let's say, the Iraq reconstruction fee, a Serbia reconstruction fee? I mean, it's like if you're going to do that, start hitting tourists with a tax for whatever policy goal you want. I mean, then you have to do it across the board, and everybody has to start paying fees. Or what am I paying a fee for today? Oh yeah, what you did to Ireland for several hundred years. You're going to have to pay
Well,
because
and
you're going to pay to the
he's
Irish. I think we've
yeah. Well, he was complaining about Russian speakers. Okay, there's a lot of people that speak Russian that are not Russian.
yes, it is.
Uh-oh, it looks like
Yeah, we're
here we go
freezing up a little
again.
bit, but it seems to be better. Yeah, yeah. He was
No,
complaining about the Russian speakers. Yeah,
you were freezing. I wasn't freezing. You were freezing.
yeah. I know. I know.
All right, it looks like the gremlins of Zoom are telling us something here.
Ursula von der
Um,
Leyen is interrupting
there's no,
a discussion.
yes, you're not going to come across two other people like ours truly, um, that go deep, but had never read them, but I knew they existed.
Yeah,
Well, now you guys know.
exactly. Yeah,
George did his homework, like few people do on podcasts, because
that's right.
basically people want clickbait. Okay, they
That's right.
want to say outrageous things, last legisms, and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And where does that get you?
It doesn't get you anywhere. Exactly. It's just people gassing away, and it is clickbait. Just hey, I got something, and then put a nice headline on it, and oh, look at how many views we got. So yeah, oh, that's right. And then of course, Buddy said, yeah, yeah, I did all that. That was me, and so I need to be rewarded. And so given how close the tip jar and Buddy are, they kind of really the two are inseparable. So if you have any money lying around, anything that you want to dispense with, maybe get a tax write-off, then absolutely put it into Buddy's tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and above all, we'll help Buddy out, when he's doing his tax returns. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.